All right, so I don't know if you guys have any ideas of what we should talk about this week.
What should we talk about this week? Maybe about A Boy Who Lived?
I guess.
I think I'm actually thinking about it, and I think very few, if any, of my opinions or comments have anything to do with Harry himself necessarily.
Oh, see, I think Harry's one of the worst parts of the whole series.
He's not great. To preface, this randomly came up the last couple times. Last time we
because we were talking about Doctor Who at the end of last episode, which is really fun. We were talking about Eccleston, how good Eccleston is, and then we were like, we got to save some of this. We got to have a Doctor Who episode, and I think you were like, yeah. And then I want to talk about how much I hate Harry Potter, and I was like, oh yeah,
it's an overstatement. I don't hate it. I very much do not like it as soon as I think about it beyond the nostalgia kind of association with Christmas that I have. You know what I mean? Like the emotional stuff, because you see the 25 Days of Christmas on ABC Family, formerly ABC Family, now Freeform, was a critical time in just my TV watching life, and the Harry Potter movies were always part of that. And so somehow I associate them with Christmas. So there are lots of things working in its favor. I just think the second that you dive into it in almost any meaningful way, it's like, well, that was actually pretty shit, huh? And I did try and break down and make sure that my issues are not there's a difference between issues about how it's written and then issues that just bother me in the world. But I understand that it was not accounted for because the wizard did it, whatever. Whenever something like that happened, a wizard did it. It's like that level of thing. Some of it is false. So, for example, I'm very annoyed by the whole train system. No, bullshit. You think Google couldn't find that fucking train? It exists. It exists somewhere. You really think it's not on? You couldn't just street view that? That doesn't make any sense. But I also understand that, okay, it's a suspension of disbelief. I get it. Fine. Or again,
there's also a bus and flying cars. They could just teleport.
No, because that I get. And they can't teleport. It just seems like that's kind of expensive. It feels like the wizarding version of expensive.
Now let's slow down here for a second, right?
I know there's so many topics.
What I think we should start off with is.
But as a preface, I wanted to say that the things where it's an issue I have with the world because it doesn't sync up in my mind, but I also recognize that it's okay, but let it go. I'm trying to remove those. And my point was to say I'm focusing on the things that I think could have been written better, and it just bothers me.
Yes. And I think we can get into nitpicking at the end, because there's plenty of nitpicking that I think is worth getting into, because they are not perfect novels and they're absolutely terrible films. But I want to know what everyone's...
But I find the films nostalgic. I did not read the books until later, until as an adult, and they were not distinctly memorable for me in a way where I'm I remember this happening in the book and not in the movies. I'm sure at the time, but
it happens in either the books or the movies. 4 things happen over the course of 8 movies.
Yeah, it's pretty silly. I want to know what everyone's relationship with the property is, right? What was your first experience with Harry Potter? How did you feel at the time? How do you feel now? Because I think there is something, as we are all parents and having children who will eventually be exposed to these properties, either in the books or in the movies.
Mm-hmm. See, in my case, go ahead. Sorry.
No. I just think that's a good place for us to start in terms of what's our foundation, and then be able to dive into why it works or it doesn't work in certain places.
Okay. Yeah. I'd said this before. I didn't read the books initially. I didn't know anything about the property until I think I was just a little too old to hit that sweet spot they were aiming at in terms of the demographics.
Sure.
I was maybe 5 years too old. So I missed all the books. Mm-hmm. But then I just, saw the movies in theaters and I thought they were cool and everybody wanted to see them. And, you go to see them. But I remember thinking like, you know, they make you feel like, especially that first one has a very homey kind of feel, like even the danger isn't that dangerous, you know, like kind of just, it's nostalgic. It just feels nice. It feels like wearing a nice sweater. And it just, and there's something so like whimsical about some of the towns, and like you're discovering this with him, and it's this great thing because you know, the whole movie and book is kind of designed that way to make you feel like warm and fuzzy about it. Sure. And so from then on, it was always like, yeah, sure, I'll see a new one. That was cool. But I was never like a crazy, crazy fan of it or anything. I read the books later because I heard how much better they were. Kind of fine, you know, and that's about it. And then I've never been possessed to read them again. I will watch it if it's on TV, but like, who watches TV anymore? So that's kind of where we're at. I'm sure at some point my son will see the movies, but if he reads the books, it'll probably be of his own volition.
Interesting. Brad, what about you?
Well, I saw the first one in theaters when it came out with some cousins or something, I think. I can't even remember why. Because like I was above the age for the books too, so I never got into the books. But when the movie came out, like whatever, sure, I'll see it. And it was fine. And I tried to like start reading the second book, because the movies were so spaced apart. I got bored waiting, and like, the books already exist. I might as well just read the books. And I don't think I even finished the second one. And then I saw the other movies just like when they hit DVD, whatever. It's, the Order of the Phoenix, I think I even just saw the Riff Tracks version, was my first experience with that one, because I just didn't care anymore enough to bother watching without it. And that was entertaining.
Wow. So the two of you, very, very similar, complete opposite of me. I've not seen all the films. I think the films are terrible. We're all relatively the same age. I was definitely not in the age group. I remember my freshman year in college, I had friends who were talking about Harry Potter, and I was like, these are kids' books. And I'm like, but they're not kids' books. And I was like, all right. They are kids' books. They are kids.
They're books for nobody.
Yeah.
They're written like kids' books with content not made for kids. That doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make any sense. I read them all, and I have a lot of fond memories of reading the books. I have great memories of waiting in line for the books to come out. I have wonderful memories of, at the time, reading the books and crying like it was at somebody's that I loved's funeral. Right. I can remember certain moments in the book and having to set the book down and weeping to myself. And I say this because I feel like I look back on those moments now and I feel so manipulated. I feel so angry at myself.
Really? Because of her?
Because of her. Because I feel totally betrayed of who she was. And then every time I've had to come back and read it, the books themselves are totally tainted. Right? Like I was so swept up in all of it, and so swept in all of the magic and the whimsy. And then the more I learn about her, all of the art, all of the prose is not the best, but like it doesn't need to be, right? It's like it's popcorn. Like it just needs to be popcorn.
It's not good popcorn.
It's not, and that's the thing. It's not good popcorn. It's stale popcorn, and in fact, it's stale wet popcorn. And wet popcorn is gross.
It's pretty
and there's potential in it that irritates me so much too.
There's so much potential. And that's what I want to get into. It's like if they had only done X, and I don't want to be like one of those content creators who's like, well, why didn't they do it like this? It's like, well, it's because they didn't, right? It's easy to sit back and, backseat drive a story. If you want to tell your own story, do that. But like, there's so many choices in it that seem so poor, and I don't get it.
There's so many things that are just absolutely bonkers to me in terms of like world building. And she is no Hideo Kojima. She cannot build a goddamn world.
She cannot.
So that's probably she's like, if I had to say it at a really macro level, it's like I have issues with, like, I don't like the world. It leaves too many open questions. And some of those are, again, Wizard did it, shut the fuck up, questions. And some of those are like, no, but like, why add this? Because since the Prime Minister of England is aware of the world leaders know that there's a secret world of magic, and in that world of magic, it's like not a super secret thing to be like, I can heal bones instantly and like do all this other stuff, which would meaningfully change the non-magic users world. And can we talk about the morals and ethics of that for like half a second? You know, like there's that, and then there's also like no one would fucking play Quidditch. Fuck you. Like there's, you know, like there's a, I don't know. There's it's a big bridge, but I guess I'd say, yeah, the world building stuff, the characters, I think like some of them are set up so well and there's some great things, but like no one character is good. Like they're baffling. They like fizzle to nothing, or they.
Well, she kills any good character that she has. She makes these great characters and then she kills them. She practically fridges them, which I hate, you know. Like
the only one, I'd say Barty Crouch, but only because I think Tennant, hilariously after our conversation last time, I think he did an excellent job at that role.
Yes.
And I was very bummed that he didn't die. I think he went to Azkaban and like shows up for half a scene, you know, half a second in the last ones. And it's like, that dude was awesome. Like, he did something there. Yeah, the characters bother me, and just like, and then on top of it, yeah, the wizard did it shit is like the stuff on top of it. Like, yeah, like you think Google wouldn't have found your fucking school and your secret, my secret train tracks that go on for miles. Excuse me.
I mean, this is the reason why I don't like the movies, because I feel like at least with the book, I can psychologically understand that. But the movies are so hand wavy about some of that stuff. I also hate the choices that they make in the movies. I hate that there's not a consistent theme throughout the movies. I don't like a lot of the acting in the movies. I don't like what they choose to put in the movies. And I also struggle with so many people who like the movies more than they like the books, because the movies are, in my opinion, the inferior product, right? For all the problems I have with the books, it's still a book, and at least I can read a book. A movie, they just are not good movies, in my opinion. And that's not to say, again, I love plenty of bad movies and I feel very nostalgic, so I understand where you're coming from in terms of watching them and having that sort of nostalgia, but I just can't.
I know. Nostalgia is independent of actual quality of product.
Absolutely. Yeah. The last of them that I saw was or I don't even think I watched Order of the Phoenix. I think it was the fourth
Wizard.
Yeah. So it was just like one of those things where after that I was like, I'm done. I don't need to watch these. I'm just going to stick with the books. And
I mean, yeah. So like if we think of, so like let's start the really like from world building. Let's stay on that side for the moment. Think of something as simple as, I think I gave you guys homework to go and figure out what your houses are.
I've got an easy.
So let's talk about that. So I'm Slytherin, and I always knew I would be. Obviously.
Me too.
Awesome.
Evil people.
Hufflepuff over there.
I'm guessing you could both guess who I am, but I don't know.
I thought you'd be Hufflepuff, but I could be wrong. No? Ravenclaw then.
Yep.
I was going to say he's a Ravenclaw. He's a psychopath. That's why he's a Ravenclaw.
I don't. Brad and I only talk in these environments for the most part, and he's not super verbose.
He's too. There's no way he could be a Hufflepuff. Hufflepuffs are way too feely. Brad could care less about. Brad could meet.
That's true. That was a bad. I think I just went there because I was just thinking how chill like you are. You're just kind of like the chill. But yeah, the more I think about it, Ravenclaw makes more sense.
That's the weed and the whiskey there.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like Hufflepuff would have the most weed and whiskey. Let's be. I mean, those guys party. So here's the thing. If we even think about just the houses, first of all, having an entire house that, if not all dedicated racists, are dedicated assholes is the dumbest shit. Like if you had that house, it would be automatic expulsion. Like if you got slipped,
you're like, no, you're out.
Or you're executed.
That's the real reason for the sorting hat. Is like,
right. It's just you go to the gulag when you get Slytherin. Like, no, you know, it should be used to weed out the traitors. Like this is the easiest thing ever. Yeah. That I thought was just has some lazy fucking writing.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same way of like, oh, if the Jedi Temple also like, oh, when you make your lightsaber and suddenly it's red and your eyes go yellow, it's like, well, we got to have a school that's balanced, y'all. Like,
Right.
we have to. It's like, no, like canonically, the people who are in this house are all evil. So why do we have a house of
At
just
best,
evil people?
They're raging assholes. Like at best, like what's her name's like Draco's girlfriend or whatever her fucking name was. Like she was just a jerk. That was her whole jam. So,
well, and this is, I would come back to why Slytherin are jerks later, because I do think a lot of the problems about the book is you're reading the book from Harry's perspective. It's all about Harry's perspective.
No, I'm thinking mostly about the movies right now.
Well,
I don't remember enough about the books.
I think the books and the
is
movies
that what you mean?
I think that's what I mean. The perspective is all supposed to be from Harry's point of view. And this is why I think it's, in fact, Harry Potter is a flawed individual, because he is exactly what Gryffindor are. Black and white people who can only see things in those polars. There's no nuance to people in Gryffindor, because it's like, well, no, you're either evil or you're good. And it's like, in fact, that's not how the world fucking works. But we'll get into that later. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the thing that I liked, the issue I have is just that, like, they're so, like, people are so much more dynamic than what this whole system leads you to believe. And it just wouldn't, I don't know. It just doesn't quite, it reminds me of the same lazy like mechanic and Divergent. Like I just did not like that whole thing was just like, this is dumb.
I forgot about Divergent. Yeah. I love that.
Just really dumb. And the expansion, like the end of Divergent is like even worse. Like when you see like what's actually going on and where they are and how we got here and like and the world and what it looks like. And it's like, this is so dumb and I hate it. I hate it so much.
I'll say this. I remember my wife is a teacher and a librarian and she reads a lot of YA. And I remember going and seeing Divergent with her. And I've had some very similar sort of problems with it. And I don't remember exactly what she said, but I mean, I'm going to sort of paraphrase this idea. It was like, this is YA, right? Like we need to put ourselves in a teenage point of view. And a teenage point of view is like, I'm either this or I'm this. Why can't I just be more things? Like as an adult, it's so hard to read YA novels and not put yourself in that sort of place. Like to be able to see the nuance of like, well, we're all in fact this way. It seems very elementary, that sort of way. I hear what you're saying though about Divergent in terms of the Sorting Hat comparison, in terms of there is no nuance to it.
Yeah, and also like Divergent, I liked the idea, but it's just it was somebody trying to make bank off of Hunger Games by making a Hunger Games clone. That was the only reason that book series came to be. But yeah, no. So then my thing with the only really interesting, the problem is all the interesting theories I genuinely believe are not real. I think that's us being better writers than her, because it's just like, you know, like and well, maybe not. Maybe there's enough of this one. So like the idea that, you know, it's the cores are basically like smart, cunning, or you know what I mean, like kind of like sharp edge cunning, and then nice, basically.
Kind.
Kind. And then anyone, you are those things, one of those three, but anyone can choose to be brave. So like this idea that like, you know, and I don't think that's what the Sorting Hat was trying to say in the last book, movie, whatever. I think he was trying to say like, no, your choice matters regardless. If you had said Ravenclaw because that's what it felt right to you, then that's what I'm always going to go. You know, like he's like, if you know where you want to be, then you know yourself. Like I think that's kind of what he was trying to tell him, that his choice mattered. Because that his agency matters.
Yeah.
That was actually something I really liked about that. So I don't think that's what this theory is.
But it's so retconned, right? Like that's a thing that feels so retconned for her to be able to say, right, like, you know, that you do have agency. That's not the story of Harry Potter. In fact, the story of Harry Potter is that there is no agency, that it is all about fate, that it's all
both though. I will say the problem is that she sells both, because the whole time it's, why are you this and he's there? What could have, what? couldn't, you two are two of the same coin, and why are you connected? And it's like, and he's like, why am I not him? I felt that theme very consistently. I'll give them that. But at the same time, yes, you know, he can't control. It's a kid being dismissed and gaslit and then have to be like, I told you every single year at school. Are you fucking kidding me? Dumbledore is such a shitty principal.
Yeah. Dumbledore sucks. Dumbledore totally.
It's pretty bad.
He's so bad.
Severus Snape, fuck all the way off people who like that dude. That dude is so toxic and terrible. And like stands for nothing except his embarrassing obsession over a girl who genuinely was just wanted to be his friend. Like, it's so gross.
Yeah, it's super gross.
It's so gross. And like, yeah, okay, James might have been an asshole, but like Snape was
James was an asshole. James 100% was an asshole.
But still, so was Snape.
Yeah,
that doesn't make Snape better.
No.
Snape is the
I just
original
like
wizard
Alan
nice
Rickman.
guy.
He's
Right,
nice.
Alan Rickman. Yeah, he's a nice guy.
Yeah.
He's a nice guy. Yeah, he's a nice guy. It doesn't like we have to take Alan Rickman out of it, and that's why I like the books is because it's like you don't get you love Alan Rickman, right? It's loved Alan Rickman, right?
Of course.
So take Alan Rickman out of it and put fucking Ben Shapiro, and then is Severus Snape in fact?
Change nothing else.
There's nothing else.
Everything
It's just it's Ben Shapiro as Severus Snape, and then you're like, yeah, there's no way I'm ever gonna like this guy.
Yeah, terrible.
God, it's the absolute worst. I just
Brad, what's your take on the agency or the Sorting Hats or anything else that we're sort of weighing in on here?
the house discussions.
Yeah, like I mean, you and I talk a lot about like fate and agency and like any of that sort of stuff. Like what's
and
your
I
very
usually say that I don't believe it and I think it's dumb.
yeah.
And I am on board with that thought here. Although I mean, it's fiction. I'll grant it, whatever. It's prophecies and stuff. But I think it's extremely lazy. And it's
The Sorting Hat?
And just as a world building thing to run a school is very strange.
Yeah.
In many ways, to separate your children not randomly, but based on things that are not being controlled by. I mean, it's a very strange organizational structure for a school.
And this is a
But,
coveted
Dumbledore
school.
is terrible, so
Yeah.
it makes sense that he would run the school terribly.
That's the other thing. Like the Triwizard Tournament.
Yeah.
Are there no other schools in Britain?
Yeah, that's the question.
What?
Like,
How many wizards are there? And tell me the wizard to school ratio, please. Where are the American wizards, first of all?
well, and that's the interesting thing that I want to get into later is like the idea of the hierarchy and the elitism of Harry Potter is we're really thinking about this. Like we're talking about the Ivy League of schools, right? There probably are other magical schools that are like trade schools or state schools or other things like this. And there's nobody else there, right? Like there's just like, nope, there's like millions and millions of magical people that also have to go to these other shitty schools, just like normal people have to go to like community colleges or trade schools. So that like,
it really bothered me that the German school was all male and that the French school was all female. Both because of gender stereotypes, but also because I wasn't German. He was from the Ukraine. I don't remember. Romania. Was it Romania?
Romania, yeah. Because that's like where the dragon's from too. So he's
I think
got, like,
so.
that,
Yeah, he's the dragon. Yeah. Because like, is there not an equal level of school for the opposite gender or like, and also the idea is so antiquated, whatever, this came out years ago, but like the idea of a gendered school, like fuck off. The whole thing, I don't know. It always just rubbed me the wrong way. Like, what if there were men in France who wanted to compete?
That just
like,
struck
why?
me as a very British way to write about schools because
It's
not
why?
historical exactly, but like the aesthetic of historical schools from a British perspective, you'd have a lot of all boy or all girl school situations, even though it doesn't actually make sense with how she builds the rest of the world.
Yeah.
It's strange.
Yeah, I mean, I think it completely. It is that sort of soft world building that I think for a younger person, you don't think about it, right? But the moment that she does in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, introduce that there are American schools, you're like, well, wait a second. If there are American schools, that means there are schools everywhere. And how come we didn't know about any of that? How, like, what do you mean that Dumbledore happens to be in the UK and that there's no, like, it is literally one of those things, and I'm going to make a terrible comparison, but imagine if rather than, like, I'm putting this together in my mind right now, so please bear with me. If rather than a world war happening with Hitler, if every other country in the world was like, no, man, this is a German thing. We're not going to deal with this. Like, that only Germany could deal with their own sort of issues. Like, this idea of, like, what if Dumbledore is the worst wizard in the world, the strongest wizard in the world, how come there aren't other wizards teleporting in from all other countries? You know, like, where is the delegate from Kenya and from Australia and from Taiwan? Like, to me, it's like one of those things where it's like, what do you mean? What do you mean?
They're theoretically in the Ministry of Magic, though, right? Like, that's where the government is. But again, it's run like a DMV. Like, what are you talking about? Like, everything about it is completely administration, and then
it's Anglo. It's only the UK. Like, it's that's the strange thing, because they get into that when it comes.
You just mean like there was some.
There's some sort of stuff, but once they get into Fantastic Beasts, they have a completely separate government that is all about North America, and that's the interesting thing. That, like, it's at everything that she does as a writer, she totally makes these mistakes again and again and again to sort of explain things. It's like, well, this contradicts this, and this contradicts this. It's just, this is why these books are terrible. They're not good.
It's just not thinking things through, and they're like, oh, I can't change things that have already been written too much, so now I have to invent a whole other thing that's separate, even though that wouldn't make sense.
None of it makes sense.
Because you can't overlap with, past canon or whatever without causing, not that she's a stranger to causing issues with changing canon.
Yeah.
You shouldn't lean on that too much. Just awkward.
Yeah, I just and like part of it is I don't like Tom Felton's acting in it, but like Malfoy as a character, like if we get into the character stuff, Malfoy drives me insane. Ron doesn't grow in any meaningful way. Hermione is clearly just matched with Ron so that he wouldn't be left out if she did the correct matching with Harry, which makes far more sense because literally Jenny says like two things. Who cares? There's just all these things. The introduction of time travel at all is insane. Stop adding time travel to your shit. You know what I mean? Like just
to fix things that the author is creating. The author is creating problems to justify time travel. They're creating issues that like there's no constraint to this. Like, you're the author, you can choose to make different choices that you don't need time travel.
I know. It's just
So is Malfoy a bad character, or is Malfoy a bad character because we are seeing Malfoy from Harry's point of view? Right? Like, in my opinion, and again, this is me inferring things, right? We always are looking at Malfoy as this person who is attacking Harry, who's always after Harry. And it makes me believe, it's like, if I'm looking at this in terms of like a biography about Harry Potter, right? If I'm thinking about it the same way that, like, if I'm reading the Steve Jobs document, like biography, or like the Beatles biography, like, they're going to write about their experience, and their experience is going to say, well, these people were coming after me, right? There's so many times where I don't trust Harry as a narrator, because I think he's an extremely flawed human being.
Sure.
I don't think she's that good at writing.
I don't think she's that good at writing either, but I also don't think Harry's a good character. I don't think he's
he's selfish in a way that abused kids can be. Like, let's be very real about that. Yeah. So like when you're suffering literal abuse for that many years, and especially when you're neglected at that level, getting that fame and that praise and like being the guy and the important shit, and like even if it caused pain, like with his parents, like I think there's probably something very addicting to that level of attention and that level of feeling important after something like that. But
yeah. To be put on God level status as well, to be like, not only are you a god, you're in fact one of the best gods that are ever going to be. Like, it's like one of those things where it's like, yeah, you're totally right. I've never thought about it in terms of abuse of like, yeah, this kid was neglected and abused for most of his childhood. And then one day, boom, you have fucking superpowers, right? And you're the most famous kid in the world. Right, like,
and you're rich.
Also, one of the richest, which is,
and you're rich, like really rich.
So bothers me that like year 2, 3, 4, Ron is still like having his used hand-me-down shit fall apart while Harry's just like watching him. Like, I could toss you some gold coins, but like, I just watch you deal with it.
It's a very British thing.
He was 10, and no one had ever taught him any. Who's teaching him anything? Nobody. Like about being a human? Yeah. Like, there's a thing that I have an issue with when it comes to boarding schools in general is like the family environment is where they learn to be people, right? Like, yes, school matters too. And I get why people make choices they need to, and, you know, whatever makes the most sense at that time. But like, it's just such a, like, no one is teaching them how to be good in that school. And in fact, it's almost like a hilarious, you know, like a British thing. Haha, we're all mean, you know, kind of thing. And I don't know, maybe we're going too far into the like, beyond the standard of expectation.
No. Let's go.
I'm talking more about like Neville deserved better. Like that's more like the area I'm at, you know, where like killing the snake was not enough. And like, so you don't get to just casually drop that like Neville could have been Harry. Like let's explore this a little bit more. I don't feel like if she was leaving it to subtext. I feel like it was just not explored. No. And Neville got virtually no recognition for what I think she tried to express as like a very much him stepping up and, you know, taking the reins, you know, at the very end. You know, at Hogwarts when Harry's gone, Harry, Ron, and Hermione are gone. When they come back, Neville's like running the show. Or wait, was it Neville in the books?
It's Neville, yeah.
It's Neville, right? There was someone else, Colin, I think, but I think maybe he just comes to get that. I can't remember. But it just like I just don't feel like Neville got enough. I think the random death of one of the twins, you know, you may as well not do it. Like, if you're going to do it, then like, you've got to like lose a couple, like Percy also absolutely had to die. You know, like
why kill Hedwig in the beginning of the book, right? Like beyond, oh, it's going to be real. We're going to kill the owl, where it's like, what? Really? Why? Like,
I can understand it as a point of motivation of like, they're coming for him. Like, it's like, you know, they're trying to
kill Hedwig, kill somebody who matters. The owl is just the bird.
Oh, I think he loves the owl. I mean, it's his owl.
But here's the thing. He can get over the owl. If Ron dies in the first 30 pages, that book is so much different, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's like, the owl dies. Like, again, there's so much plot armor in this book where it's like, like, this is not like, there's no real stakes to this.
Actually, that's a great point. If Ron had died, I think about like Ron's potential journey that never really comes to fruition is Ron feeling perpetually as though he is second fiddle to Harry because of the fame and money and, you know, all this stuff that Harry has that Harry doesn't even understand because he seems to be just incredibly low in emotional intelligence. So he just doesn't seem to like, it doesn't register with him. Like you were saying, like at the money, like Brad, when you were talking about like, he doesn't like, he's super rich and he's watching Ron struggle. And like, you know, Ron is extremely conscious of the money difference between the two of them. And he even just sees like the lack of worry and whatever from Harry. And he's probably so embarrassed. And then, you know, Harry's got the fame and Harry doesn't have to share it with anybody because, you know, he's an only child and like, you know what I mean? Like he sees all of that and him grappling with his resentment and animosity, which he starts to tackle, I want to say in like book 5, 6. And then in 7, instead of it being he had a pissy fit and like ran off into the woods, and so he needed lights to be able to get back to his, because he knew the big thing that that Ron got to do was to come back after running off like a child, having a tantrum. Yeah. That was Ron's climax. Congratulations. Excuse me. I'm so annoyed. I'm so annoyed. He would have been perfect to have.
Yeah.
Kill
if
off.
If you kill Ron in the first chapter of that book, that whole book changes, where suddenly Harry's like, this kid who's been with me the whole time, who has looked up to me, died because.
The other thing would be like if he died halfway through, and if he died in a way that was like instead of Dobby. Instead of Dobby. Dobby can live.
Right.
Yeah.
And Ron instead would, through the first half, be bettering himself, getting over this, kind of coming into his own and feeling comfortable. And then it would be the ironic thing that by going through this, he would then sacrifice himself in some way that made him a hero and made him talked about exactly the same way he's always wanted. Sad, moving, gives an actual arc. You know what I mean? Like
gives Harry more of a reason as opposed to like
fucking Dobby. Yeah. Like Dobby was it. Yeah. Dobby was it.
I never understood the whole Dobby thing. There's a whole anytime I was like, why this?
It feels like the C plot on a kid's like cartoon show. Like in any given episode. Oh well, Dobby, what are you doing in the kitchen? Oh yeah, we make all the food. We're gonna do a strike. You know, like that's this week's episode. Yeah, every time you check in with Dobby, he's doing something else.
Yeah.
He needs something. You know, he's so, I don't know. I guess I like Dobby in that he does give dimension to the world. I like that they're like, no, we have to make the food. It doesn't just magically appear. More of that, please. I love that.
But that's not what the book is about. Like, if that's what the book's like, if Harry Potter is a story about a rich, spoiled child, and then every single book, his eyes get wider and wider to be like, oh, right, this is the environmental cost. This is the economic cost. That like really, like imagine if that's what it was about. It was like, oh shit, like in fact, like magic actually has all these consequences, but it's just Harry's privilege slowly being stripped away from him. Like,
or just him like starting to realize, like, if the larger thing weren't, we have comically embarrassing people working for us in our governmental system. Like, it could have been more like, you know, there's a lot of tension now with leaders, you know, in the Muggle communities, and maybe there are tensions across like Muggle and Wizard. Like, that would have been, I think, a cool escalation. But I guess they just couldn't get away from Voldemort. But like, this teenager, like, I don't care how charismatic he is. He's a teenager.
Still a teenager, man.
Punch him in the face. Yeah. Jesus Christ. Don't find a way to lock teenagers from using death curses. Maybe let's make those not as easy to do.
Yeah.
Do something. Let's work on that.
Now, question for you all. I don't know how much of Harry Potter fans you are, but did either of you get to see or get to read the play that is?
Yes. I read it.
Yes. Brad, did you read it?
No.
I think it's one of the better parts of Harry Potter's lore, because we get to see adult Harry Potter be the asshole that he in fact is. We get to see that Harry hasn't learned anything. We get to see that Ron is still this sort of weak-willed sort of person. We get to see that Hermione in fact should have been the titular character of all of this, and should have in fact been the person we were following the whole time. And we get to learn all of this stuff about Harry's son would go to Slytherin because Harry is so much more a Slytherin person than anything else. And it's such a good piece of fiction, and it's so clear that she had nothing to do with it. She had nothing, because it is all the bite, it's all of the interesting parts. And it takes everything that you love about Harry Potter, throws it out the window, and says, in fact, this is so gross and sticky and ugh, you know.
Kind of want to read it now. Okay.
Yeah. Carolyn, you had some reactions. I'd love to.
I was thinking, I was literally trying to remember it partially because I read it so long ago and I read it so fast, such a fast,
It's a play. It goes, you can read it in 30 minutes. It's real quick.
Yeah, it's very quick. I never read anything in that format before. So
plays are great. Highly recommend plays for, if you want quick fiction, plays just.
Yeah. I did like the stuff about like humanizing them a little bit more. I thought it was a little dumb. The like, oh, it's Malfoy's kid and Harry's kid. That was a little dumb.
I wanted them to kiss too.
It was too on the nose.
I wanted them to kiss. There was some. I wanted to ship them real hard.
I go back and forth with the shipping because whenever it's like a set of good friends, I remember reading something that I hadn't really thought of before, where it's like it's kind of toxic to assume that any friendly, close relationship between men is automatically homosexual in nature or romantic. Like, so to actively wish for that. Do you get what I mean? Like, so
no,
shipping.
I get that.
I get it. And but on the other hand, like, I still like sometimes I'm like, this would be cute. And in this case, I kind of do think it would be cute because I think them being friends kind of isn't enough to like, if the idea is like, we hate each other as adults still, but we're close, whatever. Like if they're trying to do whatever that thing, I think them being like potentially in a relationship would be far more interesting.
I mean, if we're talking about good erotica, right? We have to have the tension there, right? If we're talking about like
are we talking about good erotica?
I'm talking about good erotica. I'm talking about good erotica. We have to have some stakes here. It's not just like, oh, I just met you in a bus station. Right. That's fine. I could read that erotica on it. But again, if I know, again, if there's a sort of, Romeo and Juliet, our parents hate each other and we're at boarding school and, we're both in the same house and for whatever reason, we're hanging out together. To me, I think it is so interesting in terms of seeing how they could have connected in terms of like, what are they willing to do? Is J.K. Rowling going to write that? No, not at all. Never.
Yeah, I don't think so. No, she wouldn't even really confirm Dumbledore, and I feel like he was very coded.
Very coded, yeah.
So, that whole thing is weird. So that was one of the things that I thought was dumb, and the whole twist can fall off a cliff. That is the dumbest shit I have ever read.
Yeah.
No.
Brad, do you want to have it spoiled? Do you want to have it spoiled?
You can spoil it. It doesn't
Sherlock all over again. It's lazy writing and it's fucking dumb.
Carolyn, please explain to Brad what the twist in Cursed Child.
I only remember part of it. I feel like time travel is involved, but I can't remember.
There is some time travel. There is a little bit of, it's not time travel. It's that the timeline has shifted. Is that they
totally different than time travel?
There are pieces I don't remember of it, but basically like Harry's son, Albus, right? Mm-hmm. Albus has a friendship with Snape's son, something, whatever that kid's name is. I don't think that matters. So I'm trying to, like, the individual beats, I don't remember so much, but like basically Albus gets really like close to this girl that he meets, and I'm trying to remember where he meets her. She's older than him, and like she starts like wanting to hang out with him, and like they kind of get close. And it turns out the big twist is that she is a secret child, so the cursed child of Voldemort and Bellatrix Lestrange. And at some point, he knocked her up. She had a kid. They whisked them away. No one knew something, and so she came back to kill Albus instead of Harry. I can't remember. And so I don't remember how the time travel factors into it.
Well, because Harry essentially makes a wish to change the past, right? Like there's like, that's right. That's like, it's a spell or it's a wish or it's something where suddenly like they're hanging out and then suddenly, oh my gosh, I wish this wouldn't have happened. I wish my dad wasn't Harry Potter or something like that. And then they're all there and like there's a big chunk of time that is missing, and then it's all about the kids having to say, oh gosh, this in fact is not going to work. It's not good. It's in fact really, really not good.
I just remember that one key thing and being like, this is really dumb and I don't like it. No. But it is worth the, I don't know, a couple bucks I paid on Kindle. Nook?
I think it was the Kindle. I guess it was the thing that I've always wondered is like, why was this a play? Why did they need to make this a play? Why have
I never
all
saw
the
it. I
main
should have.
heroes-
It was right there.
Yeah, it's weird. It's always
And then
made
there was
some-
this big deal about Hermione being cast black because she
Yeah.
apparently it was never specifically described in the books, which I don't recall.
She just has curly hair. That was they never say the color of her skin. It's just curly hair. The directors in the movie decided to cast her as a Anglo red-haired girl, but
well, and also like that doesn't matter. It's the
Doesn't.
same. It's you know what I mean as like the Little Mermaid. Like it doesn't matter how it was originally written. It can be anybody. Get over yourselves.
But
You know-
my daughter can't be Hermione then if she's black. I don't want to do this. Come on. It's just dumb.
So it was dumb. But I do recall that.
Brad, what's your least favorite part of Harry Potter?
My least favorite part, that nothing happens and 50% of the movies are classes that don't affect anything. It's just filler world building, that the world building is bad.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember feeling that way. Or maybe I just liked the music and the imagery, you know what I mean? Like it's got some good, like vast imagery.
The aesthetic of
Yeah.
the world is nice. I think it's a nice world to like be in. It's comfy. Everything feels fun and adventurous, and it's aesthetically pleasing. Everything looks great as far as the movies. I didn't read the books, but
Mhm.
as soon as you think about any of it, almost nothing affects
Annoying.
the plot.
Yeah.
Like 6 or 7 things happen. Everything else is classes that don't mean anything, or like have 10 seconds of plot in a 20-minute, classroom setting. It feels like Hellier. Kellen. It feels like watching Hellier.
Wow.
Everything
Wow,
looks
Brad.
great. I like, the world that they're living in, but as soon as you think about anything, it completely collapses,
Yeah.
and the plot makes no sense, and the characters make dumb choices at every chance,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just nonsensical. But it's like pretty and well made, and like the aesthetic is amazing, but
It's good music.
the world sucks.
Some of the
Yeah.
characters are funny,
Sure.
and some of the things are cool.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess that's the thing.
like, it's
If
a
you
great
take all-
theme park ride.
Yeah.
I'm sure,
Yeah,
but
I'm sure.
like, as a story, it just like whatever.
If you take all the magic out of Harry Potter, right? If we take all the magic out, is it a story that's worth telling?
No.
No, right?
It's just if Hitler came back to life, like great. Like, okay. Dumb.
Without the magic, it's a series of Hardy Boy novels. With
It's a very good point, Brad. Yeah, and to go back to something Karen said, the whole Quidditch stuff never made sense to me. Like what?
Quidditch
Like
is so dumb.
Quidditch is so
Absolutely
dumb.
doesn't.
And
Why?
it doesn't-
There's
it's
no
just filler.
reason.
It's just
Yeah.
filler.
It never matters.
No.
And also, just like if the snitch is 150 points, just get the snitch within the first 10 minutes and you'll be fine. Like you only
Right.
get 10 points per goal or whatever, right? Maybe you get 30 depending on the ring. I don't know. But like, also, yeah, I get it. You have brooms and that's awesome. But like, this seems unnecessarily dangerous to be flying these when you could just be playing soccer, my dudes. Like, it just,
Sure.
I don't really get it.
There are so many
Yeah.
parts, and I don't. This is maybe we get into the nitpick section. We've been talking for a while, but like this is where I start to wonder: is the magic life better than the Muggle life? Right?
Doesn't
Like-
look like it.
It doesn't look like it. In fact, it looks
It's pretty
worse.
stressful in a lot
It
of
seems
ways.
extremely stressful, and there is a part of me that thinks about like, it's weird to think that there's never any talk about, and this is strange. I'm going to bring this up, and this is a children's novel. I understand this. There's no talk about sexuality in this book at all. There's no talk
Yeah.
about what magic means for sexuality. There's no pervy moment. And I'm sorry, Harry Potter. I do not believe that Harry Potter doesn't go through a few years of being a total fucking perv and doing everything in his power to use his magic to make girls uncomfortable. I feel like that is, there are other characters, sure, if it's not Harry, that's fine, but that is a thing that's never talked about in the world, and it makes no sense to me.
Sure.
Makes
You got
no
a school. You got a school with a wide age range.
sense. Mhm.
completely co-ed, and you have things like polyjuice potion and
Mm-hmm.
invisible cloaks and no perviness at all.
No perviness. They don't.
It's just totally wholesome.
It's
the
just
whole
them
time.
snogging a couple of times.
Yeah.
It's just him and Guinea. We went under the willow and we snogged for a while. It's like, ugh, gross.
Yeah, it would be extremely
Weird.
gross.
It would
Annoying.
be the halls of Hogwarts would be covered in stuff.
Well, yeah, because nobody has you don't have any privacy in your room.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much the entirety of when you're there. That's part of the reason why, when it comes to it, I actually like, even though it's got its own set of bullshit, I think Magicians does it way, way better.
Yeah, Magicians is real fun.
But also, like, are you really going to tell me that there aren't people who have magic and have no interest in living in the magical world? There's really no reason for them to do that.
Yeah.
Like, the thing I was waiting for was, like, this is a known magician who lives in that apartment, that normal ass apartment,
Mm-hmm.
just an apartment right there.
Mhm.
And they go grocery shopping and, like, they're a musician. Like,
Yeah.
they don't have to. They don't have to, like,
Right. You have
We're
seen
in the
like
magical
Harry
world.
running through the city when he's in trouble and he needs help. We're like, oh yeah, so and so was in that apartment building, and he's just like, no, fuck you. And
No,
slams
go
it down
away.
Harry's face.
No.
go away.
I'm
I'm
not
a-
dealing with that shit.
I didn't
Like, you're
imagine.
gonna
Fuck
tell
you.
me? Yeah, like, we see the Weasley's house. Like, why do you live there?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. Like, are you only capable? Their house looks like it's made out of like the old woman in the shoe kind of
Yes.
style,
Yes.
where it's
Mhm.
and what? Why with magic wouldn't you be able to
Right.
build like a more normal looking house,
Mm-hmm.
like an
It would
even
have to be
nicer
built
house?
with magic the way that
I-
it is built. So they did that on purpose.
Yeah.
So I won't. Why?
Well, there's also the Weasleys in general. There's all this weird coded stuff where it's like, Ron's parents are supposed to be salt of the earth, good people, but at the same time, they can't stop fucking unprotected. You're telling me that if all the magic that I can't cast a spell on my dick and be like, nope, sperm doesn't work right now. We're fine. We can keep fucking. We're not going to
I
have
thought
kids.
she wanted to have a girl. Wasn't that the thing?
You're telling me that
I
magic
make
can't
that
do
up?
that? That magic, I can't be like Expelliarmus and suddenly it's the egg. Like that's the thing to me. It's like there are so many things about Ron's family where I'm like, this is such code for. Aren't the Irish a little weird, y'all? Aren't these like, it's like it's just so weird.
That's another good point that you bring up about the spells, right? Like,
Right?
because we're talking about someone from a writing perspective
Mm-hmm.
who the only it's like pain
Yeah.
and death.
And as soon as
That's it.
everybody knows that there's a death curse, that's just all they do to each other.
That's just
when there's
it.
any kind that's it.
Like, you think
You
somebody
try
won't
to dodge
be like
the blue stream or whatever, and you try to
Right.
hit somebody else with it.
like that leads into like, think about the crime.
Yeah. Like
We're
there's
getting pretty nitpicky here.
but this is where you start to go when you start to think about Harry Potter too much, where it's like,
Yeah.
right. The fuck.
No,
is
you know what?
this?
If we're talking nitpicky, actually, okay. Two things. One,
things.
are you really going to tell me there's never a line outside of the doors to the dormitory, or that they don't just wave each other through? They're not
Yeah.
all
Mhm.
going to do that. And also, very especially that for Ravenclaw, you want someone to solve a fucking riddle
Mhm.
every time
Every
you want
time?
to get into their
No.
door? Are you
No.
kidding me? Can you imagine you've late and you forgot your keys or something, like you forgot something?
Yeah, like I forgot my book.
Now you have to answer a riddle. Oh my God.
It's the worst.
Like, what if like 10 people are all standing there?
Yeah.
Do they all count? Like, how? Help me. This is dumb.
But for the few moments we see it, like it feels like a cool, fun thing.
Mhm.
And then,
But as soon as you
Think
think
about it
about
at
it in practical terms at all, it's just like, no, that would be the
no,
fuck.
this makes no sense. Why?
But
How did
guys,
you do
people in
this?
Ravenclaw like riddles, right? That's how you know you're part of this group.
Smart people like riddles.
They like
Brad,
riddles.
Brad, you like fucking riddles.
Yeah.
I mean, I do, but it'd still be terrible.
So just, yeah, I don't. Ugh. There are things that I really, really like though. So that's part of what's so frustrating about it. The idea is cool. I think there's a big missed opportunity as far as like making the tension be with the Muggles, or at least some class of Muggles.
Yeah.
They definitely don't do enough. There's a lot of intention behind her addressing the different social castes.
Yeah.
Because the mean, evil rich guy and his dad versus my best friend who's poor in the most traditionally Irish way.
Sure.
So she clearly and intentionally meant to have some sort of conversation and then proceeded to do nothing other than rich people bad.
Rich people bad.
That was it.
Yeah.
That was it. And there's no middle class that I saw, unless I guess Hermione's middle class. That's the other thing. Hermione's parents are Muggles. What if they just go off and if they go off and fucking just tell somebody that, and you're telling me that the Ministry of Magic knows that immediately, so they functionally have Skynet? So like there are a lot, like the human Muggle world would be very concerned to know that they were being monitored at that level, I feel like. And to do that at a global scale, I guess detecting magic might be like sonar. Maybe they can like see, this is where I'm going with it. Like, how do you know?
So here we go. I have an idea for us right now. Okay. So are we all familiar with the Amazon TV show? It was also a Mark Millar comic book called The Boys.
Sure.
We all familiar with that property? Right.
Yes.
What if there is a separate Harry Potter property, which is essentially a Muggle freedom fighter group, which is like, we need to fucking deal with these wizards. We have people are like, look, we've got wizards all around us who know who can wipe our minds, who can send us to like misery prison anytime they want to. Like there's
it's like the Justice League gets made, I think specifically with a contingency plan to deal with Superman.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Or no, like the Avengers was made specifically originally to deal with Thor.
Yes.
So like that kind of stuff.
A kind of a thing like that, but it's all humans. It's a human task force to be like, we need to figure out how we can get rid of the wizards, right? Like, so we need to infiltrate. We need to get a wizard on the inside to get us to help us understand this. Like, because in some ways, there's a Matrix like level of like, if you wake up and you're like, great, I'm a human, I'm a middle class, American human, but I know that there are wizards who could point a wand at me and make me turn into a frog if they wanted to. My life doesn't matter anymore. I don't live in this reality. I'm just a wizard toy, and like this idea of like going and be like, we need to get rid of the wizards. How do we fight wizards?
Conversely, like, it feels like you could, well, maybe you couldn't do it that easily, depending on where, like you could theoretically rob wizards of all of their money immediately without having to access it. Like if they could just like fucking, like you get a gun to their head, it's like, here's a bunch of money, okay, fine, and they could just poof, there it is.
Yeah.
I think of them as like potentially like pretty serious marks, but my bigger thing there has more to do with the
typical Slytherin.
Slytherin all the way.
It's just logic, y'all.
Yeah.
I like this idea a lot.
I'm a realist. I'm not a cynicist.
Yeah.
You have
but
somebody's like their car breaks down and their neighbor has to drive them to the train station for the first day of school, and they see them like go through the thing and fuck.
Like the Ministry of Magic knows immediately somehow and is able to isolate. They've also been like wiping our minds constantly. You would think that's the other thing that I'd say is bad writing on her part, is when they're like, oh, no fewer than 7 Muggles. Oh, and this type of breach hasn't happened. This should be happening every day.
Every day.
Constantly. But like they are theoretically, in terms of how often this would realistically happen, your mind would have been wiped like Men in Black style at least like 10 times by the time you were an adult. So imagine, do we all start getting like, are there side effects of it? Like they're using magic on us. Imagine how annoyed and nay, pissed off and violated and righteous someone would feel to know that magic had been like these guys exist, but they really want to be secret from you, so they're using magic on you. I want you to imagine that was like on Fox News.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like people would be so mad. Like, there's no way that people wouldn't immediately, like, to your point, kind of want to be like, we have to get rid of them.
We gotta get rid of these.
But simultaneously, there would be there'd be the people coming at them for, like, again, I can't help but go back to the ethics around the medical capabilities they have, and think of the lives that could have been saved, or like think about like even something as trivial as healing a bone overnight instead of in 6 to 8 weeks. Like, for us, that'd be huge. Oh my God.
You have to go further. You have to literally think it's like, okay, cool. So it's the 1970s and 80s. The AIDS epidemic is happening. There are millions of people dying.
God.
And guess what the wizards do? Well, I think that the muggles are dealing with their weird blood disease now, right? There's like, you're telling me that AIDS doesn't affect wizards? No. There's a wizard who has a blood transfer or for whatever reason gets AIDS, and suddenly they can cure AIDS no problem. There's no wizard who gets cancer. There's no wizard who has Alzheimer's. They got all those things, and they just
all those things are caused by the brain wipes.
There it is, Brad. There
it's not only they're not doing anything about it, is that they're doing it.
Yeah,
they're causing it.
I love that.
And the kid wizard finds out that that's like why their grandma died or something, because they kept having to wipe her brain. And that's the
it could be a situation where like Hermione's grandparents, you know what I mean? Like someone who,
like one of the mudbloods,
who's raised by muggles,
family out in the world, presumably that they hear from somewhere.
That's the other thing. I'm sorry, just generally, like, you can't have the train station be literally overlapping and then tell me you that muggles are these. Gosh, these muggles sure are weird. You know, you work with them all the time. You live in our world. Like, are you telling me you've never had a hot dog? Like, are you really telling me? Do you get what I'm saying? Like, the idea that they only
Am I using this right?
Right. Like, you literally we live on top of each other. This makes no sense. You created an interwoven world that you then segregated, and it's like, but it doesn't make sense. So that's bad writing. Like, I don't like that the Weasley's house is in the middle of nowhere and Hogwarts is in the middle of nowhere. And do you know what I'm saying? Like, but then the train station is in King's Cross.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
there's so many other weird things that way about, like, so how do the wizarding community feel about the internet? How do they feel about movies or video games or any sort of media?
They act like they are living in the 1700s, and it's like, no, but you go home, right? Is there a suburb that's like for y'all? Like, is it just, do you buy a subdevelopment? You live in our world. Like, you better be paying taxes or something. I don't know. The whole thing, it
falls apart very quickly.
Very quickly.
It really does. And the world could be cruel.
And I think that's the reality, is we all want it to be cool because there's so much potential, right? We all want to have something that could feel this way of like, oh, wouldn't it be great if wizards were real and there were dragons and there's a big bag? Like, there's so much potential there. I always felt like when I found out they were doing a movie, I was like, this shouldn't be a movie. This needs to be a BBC series, right? Like, every single year is 8 episodes, and you make it sort of a prestige series that way. It's like, I think that'll happen eventually. I imagine that probably when we're much, much older, they will take the Harry Potter series and BBC or HBO or someone will make a prestige series, and they'll make it bigger, and we'll see all the weird stuff in it, and people realize, boy, this is not as good as we thought it was. I mean, I just don't know if we're going to be looking at Harry Potter in 100 years and saying this is sort of,
the pinnacle.
The pinnacle, right? It's not going to be your Peter Pans. It's not going to be your Alice in Wonderland. It is going to be one of those things where people will look back and they'll say, oh, this is sort of anachronistic. Isn't this strange, right? And like, I honestly think J.K. Rowling is the one who's shooting herself in the foot, because the more stuff she says, the less people who love this content want to share it with other people. Because that's the question I want to ask you both, is like, I know we said we didn't want to talk about her, but let's talk about, do we introduce this property to our children knowing what we know about her, right?
Oh, yeah. I don't think it's at the, it's not like being like, read Mein Kampf. Like I feel like it's
No.
it's separate enough.
Yeah.
I mean, the banking system gets a little close,
Yeah.
but it's not quite.
I mean, yeah, there is a good amount of the racism is prevalent too. It's I think it's something that if he wanted to read on his own, he would. I don't know that I would necessarily, just because I don't love it, but I wouldn't, if somehow he heard about it and wanted to read them or whatever, I'd be like, yeah, of course, sure. Yeah. And seeing the movies, I'm sure, I don't know. I feel like some opportunity. Then again, you don't have drive-by TV anymore. It's all very intentional. So, maybe I could see him potentially going through a phase where he likes it. I mean, it's not scary enough for him anymore.
You gotta skip right to The Magicians.
The Magicians, yeah. Which is also not scary. Mostly just vulgar. So
it's very vulgar. It's wonderful.
We might wait. We might wait. Rip Magicians. I mean, good run, but still.
Yeah.
Much better world building.
Oh, yes.
So weird in some ways.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's really good. It's very like it's like they live in the same world with slight dividers, but most of the time they just live in fucking houses. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Why would they do anything else? Obviously, things would work the way it does in that show, where it exists on top of itself, and you just know the same way. I mean, like the fringe witches or the hedge witches, like it's very similar to I don't know what you would call it, like specific types of activity of like just more underground activity, and the way that tends to work, that's much more in line. Yeah. Like you kind of just know where to be and when, and it's there. Otherwise, to act like it's just normal. Because I don't know. I really enjoyed The Magicians. There are things I don't like about The Magicians, mostly just Quentin as an entity. But on the whole, I really enjoy it.
Yeah. I think we've done a very good job talking about Harry Potter, complaining about it without being assholes, getting nitpicky because we are in some ways somewhat fans of it, but we're not tearing it apart for the sake of tearing it apart.
Like, I'll watch it, but when I think about it too long, I'm very annoyed.
Yeah. But
then I think about, I will give props where it's due. Like, there are some scenes that are phenomenal. The whole thing about Neville's parents and whether in the hospital at the same time when he's visiting his parents is one of the most heartbreaking things I think I've ever read. Mm-hmm. So, that, despite, there are moments like that, but it's just not enough for this much book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a lot of book because they got thicker. They went on. Sucked. So,
Brad, do you think there's anything redeeming about the series or the books or the movies?
I mean, it gave Daniel Radcliffe enough money that he could do weird independent movies that are way better.
Him and Elijah
because he doesn't
Wood.
have to care about the money or if anyone is going to see the movie.
Him and Elijah Wood. Yeah. They both turned around and were like, "What's the weirdest shit?"
Right.
And Tobey
I'm out of Harry Potter. We're
kind
just
of doing
the weirdest fucking thing I can get.
Yeah,
money
just
matter.
flexing on it.
Sure, I'll be a corpse. Why not?
And the
such a good movie. Swiss Army Man is such a good movie.
I have not seen it.
It's excellent. Paul Dano is phenomenal in that movie.
But just the hard right they both did, where they were like, "No, we're never again." It's gonna be weird.
Also about Daniel Radcliffe is he also? I mean, the thing about Daniel Radcliffe as a 16-year-old, a 16-year-old in AA, being like, "Nope, I don't do drugs. I don't do anything else." Like Harry Potter could have easily fucked up his whole fucking life, and he's like, "No, in fact, I'm gonna have a little restraint right now, and I'm gonna stop drinking, and I'm gonna stop doing drugs." I don't think
I knew about that.
Yeah, he's very, very vocal of the fact that he's like, "Yep, this movie and this series really could have screwed him up."
So he started drinking because of the series?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was like a Drew Barrymore or like that sort of situation where it's like when you're there and you can do anything, and he had parents who were really enabling him, and it was just like, the fact that he's as young as he is and he talks about being sober for a majority of his life, and it's like, boy, what does that mean?
Yeah,
it's impressive. I mean, there is a level, and this is sort of outside Harry Potter. I hate the sexualization of all three of those actors, right? I hate the,
it's really just Emma.
It's just Emma.
She's the hot one. Like, not, I know it's not sexualizing, but she's really hot. And she's amazingly well spoken and has the best accent and the best wardrobe. Yeah. Hands down, style on point. She's great.
But I guess for me, it was gross to see so many people drooling over her, like the countdowns to when she turns 18, like all of that shit just makes me, just
super gross.
That sounds like the sort of thing that happens for probably a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, like, and I guess like that's just one of those things where it's like I hate that the internet does shit like that, right? Like I hate the amount of like shit that I see where just like, why do we have to sexualize Harry Potter? Like, why? And this
people
is
have to do it with everything.
Yeah, it's Rule 34. I get it, but like, it's still gross in my opinion.
Yeah.
Also, none of goblin talk in Harry Potter. Like, why wasn't there more goblins? And like, what are the goblins about? Where are the goblins from? Like, that's the odd thing about Harry Potter. It's like all the magical creatures, and that's what I thought the magical creature movie was going to be about. Like, great, we're going to learn more about where the dragons come from and where the fuck are goblins? Are there demons?
No, it's just more white guys.
It's just more white people. Right. Just more white people being white people. Yeah.
Yeah. You'd think they would be like, here is why all of the Muggles don't know about these mysterious magical creatures.
No,
because none of that is dealt with. There's just magical creatures everywhere.
The goblins were the bank guys.
And it's an analogy for something.
No, I get that. It's just that there's probably like goblins and trolls and hobbits, and there's probably everything. Like there's so many creatures.
Yeah.
Even before the Fantastic Beasts. So many. So yeah, the goblins, like, I want to know about like how they all fall in line. I want to know about the 18-year-old goblin who's getting ready to go to work at his first bank, and his parents are so proud, and he's like, I just want to play guitar. Like, I want that story.
I want to be a dentist. I want to be a painter. Why do I have to be a banker? Right? Like, also, where the fuck do goblins come from? Where do house elves come from? Right? Like there are so many questions for like, okay, if there are goblins and there are ogres, well, that makes me think that there are also other magical things, which makes me think that suddenly the history of humankind is very, very different.
Right. Like at some point, these creatures were around before like the Ministry of Magic, and anyone was like dealing with it.
So we would all be aware of them, and there would be no reason for them to be hidden from humans. Like it doesn't make any fucking
sense. It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. No. Like they would have had the wherewithal to be like, let's hide ourselves. Like, no.
You would need like a J. Jonah Jameson style like pundit, like
always
about, like a Muggle pundit, like radio host yelling about the conspiracies of this.
And there could be something they tune, like it kind of, they'll walk by a radio as after they did the car thing and be like, we just spotted 7 people said they saw this car flying through the sky. You heard it here first.
Yeah,
like that.
That's something to like build those nuggets into the real world.
There's not enough of that. The in between, the whatever at the train station, like that was supposed to be something like that, but that is just terribly obvious. It's like it's not
like a department of the Ministry of Magic to like defame the Weekly World News because they're too accurate. Something.
Yeah.
Anything.
Like
actual
and also just like I know someone's mom dropping them off is wearing Gap. Like, can we just acknowledge that like that you don't have custom versions of everything? Oh. It's not like Wizarding food is like different food. Like I would love for the the Weasleys to celebrate something by ordering takeout from like an Indian restaurant. You know what I mean? Like that seems like a very appropriate thing that family would do as like a celebration. Like, let's go, let's do this,
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned Indian food because I'm like, right, what is the Indian school of magic? Which then makes me think, wait a second, there's one thing that never gets talked about in Harry Potter, which is the concept of God, right? Like is this idea of, well, there is in fact a higher being that they're like, how does Christianity fit into all of this?
Magic? I love that. Actually, I would love tidbits about like, a lot of the, the Christian candidates, a lot of times they don't show up for school. You know what I mean? Like they don't accept because they, and so we have to wipe their memory and like just go from there. It's just like that would be so cool, because
so
like
cool.
A lot of Christians would, or like even a thing where it's like, we didn't think we'd get as many because they see it as satanic, but usually about 70% will come, like something like that. That would be so funny.
It would be.
Yeah, there should be a church, at least some sort of church.
Like they celebrate Christmas. That's the fucking funniest part of it. They celebrate Christmas where it's like there's never a moment where Harry's like
a true commercial holiday.
What, you celebrate Christ's birth? Yeah. No. Yeah. Jesus
probably founded one of the schools.
Yeah. So dumb.
I would probably make him Slytherin. Because I think Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff are women.
Yeah.
And Godric Gryffindor, his Jesus, is a little too on the nose.
A little on the nose. I think we've done a very good job talking about it. I think if you were a Harry Potter fan and you heard us talk, we haven't shit all over your thing. I have no interest in going to the theme parks. I have no interest in experiencing all of that.
If somebody was like, "Oh, let's do it as a group trip," I'd be like, "Fine." You know what I mean? Like, sure, that's fun, but it's because we're together and like this is fine, But it's not like a thing I desperately need to go to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No.
Agreed.
I wanted to go to the display. I think it was outside of Disney in Japan. That was like it was like a Titan hand, and you could pose in the hand, and it was the Titan about to eat you,
nice.
And it was huge. Like that's the kind of thing I would go see at an amusement park.
Oh yeah.
It was in Japan.
I want to go to Japan so I can see the life-size Gundam. Like I'm down for that.
Sure.
But like I don't need to go to Harry Potter World and be like, "Ooh,
we did not see
I've
the
got a
life-size
butterbeer." Right?
When we were there.
Get a butterbeer
exactly.
and buy your wand. And,
but butterbeer sounds disgusting. I don't want
absolutely
a wand.
terrible. Most of the food in the Harry
owl.
Potter world looks terrible.
I'm going to edit that audio later so it sounds a little different.
Are you J Ballman now? Should we get Kellen or me a shirt that says that's staying in?
Do we want to watch a semi-related strange video?
Yes.
Definitely.
I found a movie trailer for a movie that came out a few years ago that I think would be.
Brad, I don't know what we're about to watch.
Yeah, I'm very what?
For a movie that
actually came out several years ago.
I mean, on DVD.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
It is his final year at Snogwart School, and celebrity wizard Harvey Potter can't wait for graduation.
What's it like being Harvey Potter?
It's a lot of really hard work, actually.
However, he has bigger worries than simply passing Lotion's class.
I come to warn you, Harvey Potter must not return to Snogwart.
A mysterious book discovered by Headmaster Mumblemore contains a startling revelation.
We are all fictitious characters in a book series about your life here at Snogwarts.
So Harvey and his friends, poor witch trash Ron Cheesley,
Oh, you're a good boy, yeah.
and his bossy manager Hernia Granger,
Nerdicus Reductus!
must collect all 7 Harvey Potter books in order to escape the book world before the final chapter. But the evil Lord Voldemort attempts to thwart them at every turn.
For years I've been battling you and you've been beating me with that wand?
Jealous much?
Fuck.
Harvey Potter and the ridiculous premise.
This is trying so hard.
Disc DVD copy at www.harveypotter.com.
Kellen is buying it right now.
Oh my god, don't buy it. It looks so oh my god.
So that's a thing that exists in the world. I think it came out like 10 years ago or something.
That made me think of did you ever watch China, Illinois?
Yes, I love China, Illinois.
So like Hello Wizard Dear Reader. Remember that?
Yes.
That was just him. That's just the guy from China, Illinois just talking over the movies himself. Like he cuts out all the audio and he just like describes what happened.
So Brad, we're gonna watch a video real quick. So this was like a
I love him. It's so funny. Everything he does is so funny.
So this was, gosh, when did the Neely brothers make these videos? This is like early.
Oh, was it two guys?
Yeah. So this was.
They're awesome.
Yeah. Let's see if I can get this.
And they had a show that came on after China, Illinois. That was just a bunch of skits, but I forget what it's called.
So this is similar to. Oh, did I share? Hold on, let me stop sharing to make sure I've got the audio on, because then we need the audio for this.
It's helpful.
Yes, share audio. Boom. So they just would make little songs like this. So here you go.
Okay.
Oh. One man once died, but did you know that he could read all our minds? He was the U.S. Adam with Jack the wife. He was a hyper-charismatic telepathical knight. JFK.
Even though I'm better than you, I am not.
His parents were an academic team of elites. Their goal was to raise the future human supreme. He smelled like the future. His words felt like flowers. And if you shook your hand, you'd make love with it for hours. A list? Let's. Soldier? Check. Flight? True. Commie? No.
Rich?
Quite. And was he the true cousin of Sir Jesus Christ?
You fucking know he was, man.
Oh. Made love. Read minds. Went inside of more than half of mankind. Let us down, but shit, how could we mind? He was a handsome devil, but the kind of devil you like. Oh. Wore suits. Sometimes. Started movies that appeared in our minds. He knew the secrets of all space and time. And if he liked you, he would tell you, but you had to unwind. JFK.
You don't know it, but you are full of stars.
Who understands my shit?
Said the short and the tall.
He saw a million faces and he sexed them all. I saw him heal a zebra.
I saw him love his wife. I saw him bless a demon and that demon changed its life. Some secrets never aired about the sex lord he legged. Let us go back to the start.
When JFK was just specs, no one knew.
No one guessed.
Due to all of his flaws.
That the world's most human mofo
wasn't human at all. Oh. Fake man. Great stats. Never sat to empty out all his crap. How could a program love and fuck so sweet? He was the hypersympathetic telepathic machine. JFK.
Man is still the most extraordinary computer of all. And women are even cooler.
So good.
So
For a
good.
long time
Truly
since I've
bizarre.
It's so good. China, Illinois is such a good show if you've never watched it. It's so good.
Oh my god, it's so many good quotes, and I can't even find them on YouTube. I'm so annoyed. There's one where Baby Cakes has a dream, and there's like a, I don't know, there's some army captain in it or something, and he's yelling at him about something. And at some point, they get away from the main point, and the guy texts on he's like, yeah, and then, later maybe we can talk about how you're the true savior the Jews are waiting for. And he just says, oh, I never want to talk about that. And then that's the end of the dream. I just want that. I just want that exchange. Very specifically. Most of them are actually Baby Cakes quotes, but it's a great show. It's a great show.
I will watch it.
By the way, Harvey Potter and the Ridiculous Premise is a real movie. And you can watch it.
It was.
I thought that was just a bad trailer.
I believed him.
Somebody just made a trailer. It's like, no, that's a real fucking movie. Wow.
It's impressive.
Is it?
It's a movie.
It's a movie.
That I can say for certainty.
IMDb estimates that the movie cost. How much money do you think that movie cost, Carolyn?
$2 million.
$2 million. Brad, how much money do you think that movie cost to make?
$700.
Wow. Both of you way off. IMDb estimates that movie cost $14,500 to make.
Brad's way closer.
Mostly in the set, I imagine.
Sure.
Wow.
Well, this was a fun one.
Oh my gosh, this was so fun.
Thank you for putting up with me essentially bitching.
Come on, Carolyn. Please.
It was great. It was great. It was a good time.
It was a blast.
And, whatever we end up talking about next week, it'll be fun.
It'll be fun, as always.
See everybody next week.